Hello, and welcome to Begin Together, a podcast for individuals and couples who are healing from infidelity and other forms of deceptive sexuality trauma. I am your host, Janae Lindsay. I have been thinking a lot this last week about how to restore self trust. Because one of the things that happens with betrayal is that for the betrayed partner, even though they aren't the one who violated the commitments in the relationship, they so often lose that trust within their own selves. And I think that, obviously, there's a lot of really unfair things that happen with deceptive sexuality trauma, but I think that is really one of those significant pieces that is incredibly unfair, that you lose this trust in your own self, even when you aren't the one who did something wrong. And I also think that being able to speak to the betraying partner about building self trust, because especially when you have violated your own boundaries in your marriage vows and the commitments that you've made, there's wisdom in not just diving in and being like, oh yeah, I can trust myself 100% fully, completely to live in alignment now with my values and to live with integrity. So, how do you begin to build that? So, mostly for this episode, I will be speaking to the betrayed partner on how to restore that self trust and some of the steps that you can take to start with that process. But I hope that if you are the person who has betrayed your spouse or betrayed your partner, that you can maybe hear some things that might resonate and maybe some good starting places for you as well. So, first, looking at the injury, we've talked before on the podcast about Dr. Minwall's metaphor of forced choice, but basically this idea that there are two doors. There's my partner's door and there's my door. And when something happens in the relationship that feels off, this is before the basement has been discovered, that I choose his door instead of my own when I had a gut feeling, when something like wasn't sitting right. Every single time that I choose his door, it's basically like a second brain injury. It's like that gut brain injury can happen. And I want to start there because then, of course, over and over and over again, the more that I choose somebody else's door over my own, the more that I question my own reality, there can be this slow erosion of self trust. If your gut has tried to tell you something in the past and you have maybe dismissed that, which, by the way, is just such a normal human thing to do. We are going to want to believe our partner. That's really normal. That's not some character flaw. It was never your job to be a detective. It's most of us are going to assume honesty and integrity from our spouse. So it's not like that is some flaw. It's just kind of this normal thing that can happen. And I know there's some people out there who might say, like, no, truly, there was nothing. I never would have had any clue. But sometimes people will have those experiences where they just kind of feel like, oh, something is off, or maybe thinking that they saw something, or he puts the phone down really quickly or something when she enters the room and it flags for her, but it gets dismissed really quickly. And then she starts to dismiss it also in her own brain. So I'm just sharing some of those scenarios so you can kind of get this picture of over time with the choosing of his door, the choosing of his explanations versus your own kind of gut feelings, that can really erode that sense of trust within your own self. So how on earth do you begin to restore that? We talked a little bit about this in my conversation with Dr. Rachel on boundaries. So if you want to go back and listen to that, I loved chatting with Dr. Rachel, but I will just say that I really believe any step that we take to be responsive to our own needs or to better take care of our own selves, that is a step in restoring self-trust. When you do something that is inherently good for you or needed for you, that helps send the body, mind, heart, the message that I'm important, I matter, I'm deserving of being taken care of, and I'm also going to take care of my own self. So that's sort of the overarching thing that we can always keep in mind when we are trying to restore that self-trust. But three other things that I would really love to name as you are working on restoring self-trust, as you're working on healing from that injury. The first one is to honor yourself and the experiences that you have had, and to own and validate those as legitimate. And this might sound so obvious, like, of course I've been through what I have been through. Why is that something that I need to do? But the thing that happens so often there is that the brain wants to escape pain. And if you have been a victim of deceptive sexuality trauma, you very likely have experienced significant amounts of pain. So, one of the ways that the brain can come in and try to help you escape that pain or get out of that pain is by dismissing it or saying that it's not that big of a deal, doing some of that minimizing, right? Maybe comparing to other people, maybe even being in some denial that the experience happened. And that can so often actually end up feeling like self-betrayal, because now not only have you been through this really painful, devastating experience, life-altering injury, but now you're also in this place of potentially minimizing it and denying it to your own self. And that process of trying to discern between what was real, what wasn't, I know that's all part of it, but I think that first major step in restoring self-trust is actually to name the injury and to name it accurately and to own, this is what I have been through and it's very real and it's legitimate and my pain is really valid here. Part of how that's actually building self-trust is that your mind and heart are able to communicate with each other and to acknowledge this as significant. And the building of the trust part comes because I'm not dismissing my thoughts, my feelings, my experiences. I am seeing them as very real and very valid. And I can trust myself to know that this is a reality that I am walking through or that I have walked through. So that's that first thing. The second one that I want to name is to make commitments to yourself and keep them. Anytime we are keeping the commitments that we made, and this absolutely goes for our betraying partner as well. I mean, I think the first one does too, of naming the reality of your own injuries and not just trying to like brush past them or move along, right? But to look back and see these have been real behaviors that I have engaged in. These have been real injuries that I have created, both for myself and for others. But so, thinking about how you might be able to apply that for your own self too. But okay, so number two, making commitments and keeping them. When we follow through on a commitment we made, it reinforces to the brain, I can trust myself to do the thing that I say that I will do. And how powerful is that? And it just does not actually matter how big or small the commitment is when we are in that process of trying to rebuild and restore trust. I always think like, start with one thing that you know that you would be able to have some success with and be able to stay consistent with, because that just really sends the message of I can trust myself to do the things that I say that I'll do. I can trust myself to respond effectively to my needs. I can trust myself to treat myself as though I matter. And of course, others matter. But I mean, little things there, it literally could be the commitment that I'm making is I'm going to wash my face every night before bed. It does not have to be something so big. And maybe somebody is hearing that and they're like, oh, that's impossible, right? So choosing the thing that feels possible for you, that you can stick with and that you can commit to. So many times the pitfall or the mistake that happens here is just overcommitting, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to do 96 things. And then, of course, how are we actually going to follow through on the thing? So choosing one. And when you've gotten really good at that, pick the next thing. And when you're doing it, even you can add in words like, I can trust myself to XYZ. Like, I can trust myself to do this. Look at me. I am choosing to do this. Maybe the thing is, okay, I can trust myself to reach out to somebody for support when I need it. These don't have to be massive commitments. It's just that we are keeping them. I always come back to small and simple. Those small and simple things make big differences in our lives. They really do. And, especially for somebody also who has been engaging in these deceptive sexual behaviors and Of course, there's a lot of things that have to happen in recovery, but when it comes to being a person who does the thing that you say that you're going to do, it just is so powerful to really stick with those commitments. And part of what can set us up for success with this is revisiting those commitments every day. Start the day by reading through what are the commitments that I'm making. And then at night before bed, going back through that list, how did I do on these commitments? What went well today? What can I do differently tomorrow? You can really make a lot of traction just with those small check-ins. The third thing that I want to name is during this process of restoring and rebuilding self-trust is to set boundaries. I know that boundaries are so difficult and sometimes it's like they can feel so nebulous too. And sometimes people are like, the B word, boundaries. It's just not something that I don't know, they can just feel really scary. But the truth about boundaries is that they do not have to be big and scary. They are there to protect us. They're there to help us have our needs met and to even have a sense of what our needs are. And you can adjust and shift and change your own personal boundaries and what works for you, what doesn't, what's okay for you, what's not okay for you. Sometimes that changes within the seasons that you're in. But establishing and maintaining boundaries can be such a helpful tool for rebuilding that self-trust. When you're maintaining boundaries, it's back to that idea of I'm doing the thing that I said that I would do, but even deeper, it really is honoring your needs. It's treating yourself in the way that you truly deserve to be treated. It's looking at your needs and acknowledging them and recognizing them as so important. So I will also just link, I have specifically now a boundaries workbook for betrayed partners. And I have just poured so much into that workbook. So I will link it in case that's a tool that you think might be helpful for you. But the thing with these different pieces, and again, these are just starting points, the validating your experiences and seeing your story as legitimate and seeing this as a true reality, the making commitments to yourself and keeping those commitments, and then establishing and maintaining boundaries truly can do so much in terms of restoring that sense of self-trust. And I know through this, like the mind and the heart can be so at war with each other at different times, right? And also, the more we can get those two on the same page and practice behaviors that really help move through this trauma, the more that healing happens. And I truly believe restoring self-trust is a critical part of healing from deceptive sexuality trauma. The other thing, I know I said 3 things, but here I am. The other final thought here, I guess, is that I would just name, this feels connected to me to the self-trust piece, but really knowing that your partner's choices do not actually get to mean anything about you and your worth. While those choices massively impact you and significantly impact your life, they are also separate from you. Your worth is so intact and it's so precious, and you matter and you are important, right? That's just true. And somebody else's choices, while they can be so incredibly devastating and life altering, all of that, they also do not get to take away from the fundamental truth that you are a person of inherent worth and value and that you matter. And that behavior didn't actually have anything to do with you. Because the truth is that if I have an integrity problem, then it doesn't matter how amazing my partner is. Like, that problem is my problem. That's still in me. And yes, I might look at things within the relationship and use those as justifications to feel better about violating my marriage vows or violating my personal integrity, but that is not a relationship issue. An integrity problem is a personal issue. And that's not me over here saying, oh, the marriage was totally perfect and great. That's not the point. The point is that there are many times in life where we're going to have this less than perfect marriages, less than perfect partners, because no partner is perfect ever. And we can still show up with integrity. So we really cannot make somebody else's behaviors and somebody else's choices mean something about us. And I know that is so much easier said than done. But I hope that these things were helpful. I think the other thing, just as you're maybe listening to this, to think about, was there anything right now that came up for you in terms of what would it look like to restore my sense of self-trust? Or maybe even just thinking about, is that even an injury for me? Do I feel like that part is still very much intact? Because it's just different for everybody, of course. And this is a podcast speaking to people very generally. If you are a betrayed partner and you would like some support, tools, education, I am currently offering a women's coaching group. And when I tell you that it has just been such a gift, we had our first cohort and it started in July, and it's just been such a privilege for me to walk with these women who are in this group and just being in this space and the learning, of course, that we're really all doing together, but also the growth. And it's just such an incredible thing to see and experience. So, if that's something that you feel like might be helpful for you to be able to have individual support, group support, between session support, a course with literally all of the information that I could think of on deceptive sexuality trauma as it relates to partners, but also help applying some of those things, as well as work on boundaries, work on self-worth, understanding the injury, and so much more. If that's something that you feel like would be helpful to you, I will link the program. We start our next cohort this coming October, but I also now have an early start option for anyone who might be interested in working individually before the group program starts. I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to do this in a coaching capacity and to just offer what I know we cannot actually always get with that one-on-one 50-minute session once a week structure. So I'm really grateful to be providing this for the time being. The program is called Blooming Beyond Betrayal. And again, I will link it so you can determine if it feels like the right fit for right now. Thank you all so much for being here, for listening. As always, please reach out to me if you have any questions. If there's anything that you would specifically like covered on the podcast, or if you have any questions about the program, thank you so much again. Take care, and I will see you in our next episode.